Hello, I'm Oonagh Williams of Royal Temptations. Today I want to do some Irish dishes with you. I know I have a very English accent, but in fact both my parents were born and raised in Southern Ireland, and I probably have more relatives in Ireland than anywhere else in the world. If I say my mother's maiden name was Dempsey, that just about says it all for being Irish. So we're going to start with a dessert, and I normally, in classes, I like to start with a dessert first, because that way I'm absolutely convinced there's no way onion, garlic, fish or anything like that can get into the taste of a dessert, because there's no way we want garlic and chocolate. I know they're coming out with martinis and chocolates nowadays with all sorts of weird and wonderful flavours, but I like my desserts to be my desserts. I don't like garlic and onions and all the rest in with them. So this is a really simple dessert. One of my students always makes it when he goes to visit the family at the weekends, and the nephews think their uncle is absolutely wonderful because he can do it so easily. But it follows the basic Irish thing of all the normal everyday ingredients, the fresh apples, and it's in the oven as quickly as possible, because certainly on our working farm we didn't have time for the fancy foods. So this is a very straightforward dessert that's as good for breakfast, for dessert, anytime you like, and it tastes great. My son loves it. We have to fight for pieces of it when the kids are around. So don't worry as usual about trying to scribble down the ingredients. They will be on the recipe at the very end, and you can go to my website royaltemptations.com for it in writing, so don't worry about that. So in here we have sugar. I'm going to put in melted butter. Now a lot of times when they tell you to melt butter, melt chocolate, etc., they tell you to wait and cool it a bit, because obviously certain things, if you're going to add an egg to hot butter, you could start cooking the egg. But the difference is, if you pour the butter on top of sugar, the sugar automatically cools down the butter, so you're okay that way. Then I'm going to put in just one egg. And I didn't do my thing normally of cracking the egg onto a saucer this time, because I just didn't feel like it. And then to go on top, I have 2 Granny Smith apples, and I like to say cut them almost as if they're like shredded cheese. When I've said it before, I've had people leave them as huge 2-inch chunks, which is not going to work at all. So I'm just going to do the other one on one of these fancy apple peeler Cora slices. These are quite expensive to buy, but I've had mine for well over 10 years, and when you've had them that long, it doesn't seem quite such an amount of money going out. And they certainly make life a lot simpler when you're doing apples for apple pie or for whatever you want. So we're going to, 1 apple's in there. I'm just going to pull off this piece where the core was, because I didn't get it that straight, and then just cut it straight into the bowl. I like as little cleaning up as possible, because I always figure we have to do it ourselves at home. It's not a commercial restaurant where they have someone in the pot wash to do all the dirty dishes for us. And you can see I'm trying to cut it as small as possible. There's nothing to stop you quartering these apples, leaving the skin on, and just putting them straight through a food processor on the grating blade, and that way you're going to get more fibre and all the goodness anyway. The nutrients are under the skin of the apple, same as in a potato. And I like to do it with a Granny Smith, because Granny Smith apples are the apples that we can easily find in the stores. You can do it with the apples that are known as Gala, Fuji or Braeburn. That's the same type of apple, and they're a bit sweeter, so you wouldn't need to use quite as much sugar, because the Granny Smiths are quite tart. So you can see we're even talking just a wooden spoon here, so this is something the kids could do so easily. And I melt the butter in the microwave, so you're not talking about a pan on top of the stove being hot. So I've got butter, sugar, egg and the apple in there. And then to go in with it, I have got flour, cinnamon and baking powder. And if you remember, I've told you when you measure your flour, you have to be really careful to stir up the flour first and then gently spoon it into the measuring cup, otherwise you'll get a very wrong measure of flour. And also with baking powder, if you remember, I've told you to buy the baking powder that's aluminum free, because we don't need aluminum in our body, so why should we be using it? And then again, just stir all this together. It's very quick and simple to do. I, as an adult, like putting nuts and raisins into it. Most kids don't like anything but apples in here, so just take that as a warning. I am going to put it into an 8x8 brownie pan to bake, and then you can cut it into squares when you take it out the oven. But you can very easily put it into a springform pan which is circular. Then when it comes out the oven, decorate it with the cream cheese frosting that I'm going to do to go with it, and then finish it off, say, with pecan halves, and that looks like a very fancy dessert for the family or for anyone coming for entertaining, whereas obviously if you're doing an 8x8, that's an everyday dessert. So because it's for me, I'm putting some almonds in because I feel like it. And these are some of these berries and cherry mixes, but you put cranberries in, raisins in, no extra fruit at all, whatever you like. I'm just in the mood for it today. I mean, if you go into places like Trader Joe's and look, they have some amazing dried fruit mixes there. So you can put in a tropical fruit mix with it, anything like that, and you'd be amazed the difference it makes to the flavour. It obviously adds to the cost, but it's worth it. So I've got my 8x8 here, and all I'm going to do is just lightly spray it with the pan, which has got the flour already added, so that it doesn't stick. Don't go too crazy spraying it. You don't want it on so thick that it's running down the sides, because you'll see it when you take it out the oven. And this pan that has flour in it, if you think of it, the normal pan or spray is a liquid. You add flour to it, you're going to end up only doing the non-stick cooking spray for less dishes, because the extra flour takes up the extra space. So as you can see, this is quite stiff, but if you don't even have to use an electric mixer, it's worth it. I'm just going to use a spatula to scrape the rest. I hate wasting it in the bowl, so I have to scrape the rest of it out. Get it out that way. And you can see I'm just pressing it down. It will find its own level. You know, it's not one of these with a cake where you have to be very fussy. I mean, try and smooth it out, but don't go crazy. And this is going to go in a 375 oven for about 45 minutes. Now, it might look cooked well before the end of that time, but it does need the 45 minutes because it takes that long for the denseness of the apples to cook, because it's basically just apple and egg, flour and egg holding the apples together. It's that dense with the fruit. So do go for the 45 minutes. If you're not sure, get a fork or a knife and just poke around in the middle, and you can see that the dough is still wet. So I'm going to put this in the oven, we'll leave it to cook, and we'll come back and get on with something else. Okay, so the apple cake's baked and I've taken it out of the oven, and you can see in an ordinary 8x8 it doesn't look that appetizing, but it's also because the batter's around the edges and it's cooked and it looks awful that way anyway. But cut it up like this, still warm for breakfast. It's absolutely wonderful. As you can see on the photo, I've served it with ice cream, which is great for dessert, but also, as I said, you can put it into a 9.5, 10-inch springform pan and bake it, and when it comes out, let it cool, and then make the cream cheese frosting that I'll be giving you with the recipe, and either rough spread it so it's like frosting, or pipe it prettily and sprinkle some more nuts on it and serve it as a cake, but make sure it goes cold, because if you try and put cream cheese frosting on a hot cake, as you know, it's going to melt, and we're not talking cinnamon buns where you want the cream cheese frosting to melt down into it. So I hope you're going to enjoy these. The kids will love the apple cake and they'll quite happily make it with you, and it's nothing that's dangerous for them to make, and it starts them learning to cook and taking over some of the household chores with you. So until next time, take care. Bye bye.